And remember, when it comes to the 25th Amendment, the vice president's support is needed to invoke it, along with the support of 8 federal department heads. Among the 50,000 people who showed up in Washington were hundreds of people from Ohio. Some hit the road early this morning to be there to rally in support of unproven claims this election was stolen.
And then there was one woman who moved from Northeast Ohio to Washington, D.C. She watched it all unfold from her apartment window. News 5's Jesse Schultz brings us both sides of their very different perspectives and what they witnessed as this dark day unfolded. Jesse?
Yeah, and the people I spoke to, whether they traveled to D.C. to actively witness the events of today, or they were hunkered down in their D.C. home to passively witness it, they all agree that things got out of hand and fast. Lillian Gasparo, a Medina native, moved to D.C. 5 years ago. She says in that time, she's seen plenty of demonstrations and protests.
Before, it really felt like activism, and it felt like just protesting, and there were just local DC people protesting, versus this felt like there were a lot of people from outside of DC that were coming in and trying to make trouble.
Her apartment in DC overlooks Black Lives Matter Plaza, and she watched from her balcony as thousands of people marched early Wednesday towards the Capitol.
I've had multiple people reach out and say, hey, are you guys safe? Are you in an okay location? Even hours before the stuff happened at the Capitol, and that wasn't happening with the other protests.
And as Gasparo and her husband stayed inside, Ann Anderson and her husband were a part of the crowd outside. The two, just some of hundreds of Northeast Ohio natives who made the trek to Washington.
And it became quite apparent Mike Pence's decision.
They say that's when the tide turned for Trump supporters at the Capitol.
Boom, it got very loud, and that line of people that were on the steps made their way up and broke the line. And that's when I thought, ooh, this is not good.
And as they're currently working to navigate how to get out of the city with a curfew in place, Gasparo says she's not just thinking about what this means for our nation's capital, but what this means for our nation.
This is not the typical types of protesting, which of course every American citizen has the right to do. This is entirely different. So it's not just scary in the immediate sense, but it's also really scary thinking long term what this means for our country.
Now, I did reach back out to Lillian and our other contacts from Northeast Ohio that are in D.C. They say for the most part, things have quieted down. Reporting live in Cleveland tonight, Jesse Schultz, News 5.